Dave, get somebody else to do that. Get your ass up here. Not Betty.
I can follow on my laptop, I think. Okay. Oh, great, thanks. All right. NANOG, collaborating to make the internet better. All right. So let's start. So we'll start with, as an agenda, we'll have a quick board report. We will present to you the 3-year strategic plan. Also discuss a proposal to move our agenda from a Monday to Wednesday program. And followed by our education program proposal and elections and bylaw changes. And we want an open floor where you can ask all your questions and hopefully participate and give us feedback on the proposals on the floor. So we'll start now. So I'd like, first off, I sent a note a week ago giving you more of a report of what the board and the various committees have been doing. I'd like to thank all the members on the board, the program committee members, the development committee members, the communications committee, and also our NANOG staff for their dedication and their hard work. They're all volunteers except for the staff, and they work really hard. Thank you. So we are now a member-driven organization, and we have 229 members. So I encourage you to continue to be a member, and if you're not a member, to become one. We right now have 74 members at NANOG 55. Why should you become a member? Because that's what you need to do to be able to vote on the elections in October. I'd like also to thank our host, Tata Communications, our connectivity partner, TELUS, and our premier sponsors who fund us throughout the year, NTT, VeriSign, Google, and Netflix. Thank you. So the 3-year strategic goals, we met in August, the entire board, the board that was then. We met in August and we said we'll make a 3-year plan so that it survives this current board, so that we are not, we're not subject to high fluctuations. We decided then that what we needed to do as an organization was to be sustainable financially and also being perceived as a credible long-term investment for our funders. We also wanted to increase the relevance while maintaining the neutrality of NANOG offerings. We want to preserve what we like. We also wanted to reach mid-career and also early career network operators. We had noticed that our attendees were aging and we wanted to grow the ranks. And also we wanted to leverage our the new NANOG to increase member engagement and integration, people like you. So how do we do this? This is an eye test. Okay, well, we have 3 phases for the 3 years. So the first year was the transition phase, and you have heard us talk about the transition phase, We're almost done. Actually, there's just one item that's not done. What we had committed there was to be financially sustainable. We did that. We also wanted to continue our operation, and you told us, don't break it. We didn't break it. We contracted staff and we contracted systems, and we also communicated to you what we were doing. What we're starting now with NANOG 55, 56, and 57 is our construction year. So what we need here to do is continue our financial plan and make sure that we are healthy, and we will pay back our loan that we got from Aaron to get this thing started. We also want to grow the membership engagement. So we want you to feel engaged and feel that NANOG is worthy of your volunteering time. We are working on a program reformat. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. We have elections coming up in 56, and this is your opportunity to either bring changes to either the committees or to our bylaws. And we also are committed to continue to communicate with you what we're doing. And next year will be the consolidation phase. So we will have $250,000 in reserve. We will have made good progress for engaging early and mid-career networkers. We will have an education program on the way, a website redesigned, and continue to talk to you with every means we have. Metrics for success. When we met in August, we said it would be pointless to make a plan if we were not able to track it and make sure that we were making progress. So we did put a few metrics down, and we wanted our members to renew. So it was a good indication for us that if our members renewed their membership, it meant that they adhered to NANOG. So we have success there, but not everyone has renewed. We have increased new memberships. Yes, we have more members than last year. We have achieved all of our financial targets. We have also, according to the survey data, we've maintained our communications and our image. And we have grown a lot our sponsorship. And we have produced great content, and this is what you say via the survey. So that's our metrics. We have a lot to be done still. We're not done. So you've seen the 3-year plan. Some of us are terming, some of us can renew, and we need new blood. So we want you to think about becoming a member. We also want you to think about putting your name for the elections and become a board member, and also serve on one of our committees. So to do that, we have produced a list. Actually, it's a document that will be available tomorrow, where we listed what does it mean to serve on a committee, what's the time commitment, what role, what responsibility, what do you need to do to serve. So we'll have this document, and come talk to any of us, and we'll answer all your questions. It's really worthwhile. So why should you care? Because you're members, and this is a membership association now. You need to vote, you need to make sure that you have the best people in place and that you continue, and this organization continues. Okay, at this point I'll pass it on to Dave, and Dave will present the Monday-Wednesday program proposal. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
So, time on that 10.
Good afternoon. So some of you may have seen over, I think, the past 2 surveys where we put in a question asking whether people would like to see us move to a Monday to Wednesday program instead of the current where we're at today, which is beginning the program on Sunday afternoon with tutorials and then finishing Wednesday morning. The survey results have been positive in favor of moving to that, and so we'd like to present what our vision is and solicit feedback either here. You're welcome to get up to the mic and provide us with direct feedback. We're also going to include this on the survey for this meeting. So one of the biggest concerns that people had is that they want to have their weekends. They want to be able to attend the content that we've programmed for you, but they also don't want to have to leave in some cases on Saturday morning in order to get here at a decent time for a Sunday afternoon tutorial. At the simplest version of it, basically people would much rather, from what we've talked about thus far, people would much rather come here during what they consider to be their business hours, because this is a business-focused conference, more so than on their personal time. The other thing we've seen is that Wednesday mornings, especially depending on meeting location, tend to ebb and flow depending on what flight schedules look like out of that area. And so instead of putting pressure on people to either A, have to stay an extra day, or B, leave and miss the content that we've programmed on Wednesday morning, we'd like to make that a little bit simpler for everyone. Another thing that we continue to have is a request for a better track layout. People don't want to have to choose between as much content as they do. You'll see this meeting, we're actually at the other extreme where we only have one track per day, but that's actually not the norm. But people really don't want to have to choose between three things, especially when, given the very specific focus of this conference, the three things they have to choose between are generally very similar. As most of you in the room know, peering track is very popular, and we repeatedly have requests from other moderators of tracks to not conflict with that, and it's not very easy to do that. The third thing is that we'd like to add a policy track, and this was suggested by Aaron. It'd be programmed by Aaron and also by other RIRs, and this would give us the flexibility to be able to do that. What we would do is we would move to a program that begins Monday morning with tutorials. We would kick off the keynote after lunch. Peering track moves to Wednesday afternoon by itself, and as I mentioned before, we add a standing policy track. It's a little hard to read. You can download this deck off of the website and look at it a little closer, but this is what the program looks like today in its most simplistic form. I don't need to go into details, but it's basically chunked up pretty evenly. What we're proposing is, and just to back up here real quick, basically this is 4 days total of content that we're programming at this point. What we're proposing is going to a 3-day format where we effectively jam all 3 days a lot more full. Again, this gives you that extra day to travel instead of trying to jam in additional content, but it does make the first day a completely full day if you choose to travel in for the tracks. Small metric to give everyone, we've programmed about 1,020 unique minutes of content for this meeting. We get about 10% more program with the proposed changes. We're going to ask this one more time. We're going to put it on the survey for this meeting. If we still get a majority, what will happen is that the board will vote on it. If the board votes in the affirmative for it, we'll make this change for NANOG 57, which is in Orlando next February. Again, welcome any questions, comments. If anyone would like to speak now, hold it till later, or email myself, email Greg, email the PC.
Randy Bush, IJ. Could you put the proposed new up back just for a sec? Could you move the general session, exchange it with the policy track?
We could certainly consider that. This shouldn't be considered the final layout. This is proposed. There's going to be logistical reasons, just like here, for example. We have the peering track is actually on Monday, this meeting, instead of on Tuesday, just a programming note for everyone. There's always going to be logistical reasons why we may need to slide this around a little bit. Steve?
Hi, Steve Feldman, CBS Interactive. probably a more important question for a lot of people is where does the beer and gear fit in this?
You know, it's funny. I actually took off. So this would be a very. You think it's hard to read now? It'd be impossible to read if I left the social times in. Basically, everything still fits on either end of it the same way it did before. What this does allow us to do is potentially have, or we still have 3 socials. You could have a much smaller welcome social on Sunday night and actually have 4.
Okay. I actually had another, or more of an observation than a question, and that is, having done this for many years, my observation has always been that no matter what you plan, people are going to leave early on that last day, and there's just no way around it.
Yep.
I just didn't hear his question. And apparently I'm...
Make that go away.
Okay. If there's nothing further, I'm going to hand it to Steve.
Hi. So one of the things that we've been talking about as we go forward with the NANOG transition is to make NANOG into more than just a conference. And so we've been talking about doing an educational program, much like what happens in many of the NOGs in the rest of the world, where they fly people in the week before the conference and teach some classes. So before we start talking about that, I wanted to put a disclaimer on this to say, you know, this is just a very preliminary proposal, something that the board has been talking about a little bit. It hasn't been very thoroughly vetted. There's still a lot of work to do, but I wanted to just bring the community up to speed on what's happening now and hopefully solicit some input and help with planning and so forth. So, as I said, many of the other regional network operators groups offer training programs, and so this would be, you know, rather than, you know, CCIE or Juniper, what is it, JNCIE, or I think there's even a MikroTik certified training course for people who want to learn how to operate their little home MikroTik routers. This would be more focused on how do you build your own, you know, how do you do sort of whole network design and, you know, pick vendors and, you know, build something that's actually going to work rather than how do I configure my Cisco for that. And by doing it through NANOG, it would be, you know, a chance for, you know, those of us who have been doing this for a long time to share our knowledge with the next generation of operators and engineers and, you know, bring new blood into the industry and the NANOG organization. So why NANOG for this? You know, the vendors obviously have a strong motive for training people to do things with their own equipment. We're a neutral forum. Education is part of our charitable mission. So NANOG is a 501c3 nonprofit charity in the US, and there are a number of ways you can qualify for that. We qualified for that by being an educational organization, and, you know, our conferences are certainly educational content, but it would be nice to do more for that. We are the professional organization of network operators in North America. So, you know, as the people who are operating networks, you know, we seem like the natural group of people to be setting the educational standards for this. And, you know, and it's a way to bring in new people, as I said, and our, you know, our comparable organizations in the rest of the world do this already. So, you know, what would we end up covering here? You know, there's a number of topics, and, you know, this is one of those things that's still very much in flux, but, you know, here are some ideas: routing, network architecture, NOC operations, network security, you know, IPv6, that sort of thing. What would it look like? You know, first of all, obviously, you know, we need a curriculum, and we don't actually have to start from scratch on this, because all of these other NOGs that are doing this already have curriculums, and there are a bunch of organizations that are already teaching these classes for those other operations groups. So I think we can borrow pretty heavily from that and either use their material or adapt it to be, you know, more relevant to the NANOG region if there are differences between what we're doing here and what they're doing already over there. Format-wise, what many of the other NOGs are doing is week-long sessions before their meetings where you'll fly, you know, often it ends up being fly the beginners in the week before, teach them the classes, and then at the end of the week they fly home and their bosses show up, and that's kind of unfortunate. It would be nice to get them to stick around, but that may be inevitable. We'd need to pay for it somehow, and we don't want it to take away resources from the rest of the NANOG program, so would probably end up being a combination of paying tuition and getting grants or sponsorship to cover portions of it. And we would ideally have it be taught by volunteers from the community, either NANOG people or perhaps some of the other organizations that are doing this for the NOGs and the rest of the world. So let's see. I think I intended to delete this slide, sorry. Then there's the budget issue with it. Ideally, some costs would be covered by sponsors. Otherwise, it has to be tuition paid by the attendees. And we looked at putting together a cost model on this. So it looks like it would be a total of about $90,000 if we were to do 3 simultaneous 5-day, 30-student workshops. And obviously, if we adjust that up and down, the budget numbers go up and down too. $50,000 of that was hotel, food, and beverage, assuming that we use hotel meeting rooms to put these on. So hotel economics is weird, and perhaps if we were to partner with universities or someone else who had space, we could get the costs down more. That comes out to about $1,000 per student, which, assuming we do a quality program, is probably worth paying for. So what next? Obviously, this is still very preliminary, and there's a lot to still work out. Board and the program committee are both taking a look at this, and we'll come up with more ideas. And any feedback we can get from the community, or ideally people volunteering to help put this together, would be really useful. Thanks. And looks like Randy has questions.
Randy Bush, IIJ. As someone who's been doing this for around 25 years, yes.
All right. Thank you.
So we'll now invite Steve Feldman to come and talk about elections and bylaws and what we should look at changing.
We traded Steve's here actually for this. Usually it's the other Steve who worries about bylaws. So I'm Steve Feldman. I work for CBS Interactive. I have no other official title. Yay. But I did volunteer to help out this year with putting together bylaws, changes, amendments, whatever, for the election that's coming up this fall. We've been operating under this current set of bylaws for, I don't know how long, a year and a half now. It's worked out pretty well, but there are probably adjustments that need to be made and things like that as we've gained experience. So what I want to do is act as a facilitator, not be the one actually writing the changes. Well, actually, I probably will write them as an editor, but not creating the content. I want you guys to do that for me. All you guys on the board, you guys as members, and whatever else. So the main goals, as I see it, and this is my personal opinion, not the board's, not anybody else's, we need to ensure our nonprofit status and educational mission. So whatever's in the bylaws can't break that in any way. We need to find the right balance between the board's flexibility and membership's oversight. I think there are some areas right now where the board is too constrained on what they can do, and maybe some areas where it's too much the other way. So we need to rethink all of those given experience for the last couple of years. The document itself isn't very well organized. I was just reading through it again today and realized that there's some stuff in Section 8 that talks about stuff in Section 13 and so on, and just by rearranging it, probably make it a lot more readable and useful. There are things in there that probably don't even belong in a bylaws document that are just way too micromanagement of what an organization like this should be doing. Those should get removed. One possible idea is to move those things into a separate policies and procedures document like our friends at Aaron I know have done for theirs. And then there's a big issue of, do we want to tweak what's in the current bylaws, move this to that, and so on, just a series of changes, of diffs, or write a whole new document to start over with. Probably won't know the answer to that until we see the scope of the changes that we want to make. There are going to be a couple of contentious items, I imagine, as we go through there. Big issue, like I said before, is how much discretion is the board going to have versus how much needs to be approved by the membership. Again, I think the balances are a little off in a few places there, but I don't think they're too far off. One item I keep hearing about a lot from a bunch of different directions is term limits. The reasons why term limits are there are obvious for anybody who's been around long enough. Do they still apply today, or do we lose flexibility by forcing people out and losing continuity on the board? That's a question I want to hear a lot about, a lot of opinions on from people. Issues of committee composition. Right now, the bylaws get very specific about the composition of some committees and say very little about others. We should probably, to some extent, figure out which committees are really the important ones and codify them to the extent they need to be, and then leave the rest to the board's discretion to do the right thing. Things like numbers of members of committees and how they're selected and how long their terms are and things like that maybe don't need to be as set in stone as they are currently. Another question that's come up over the years is whether or not we should allow for the possibility of a midterm election, or whatever you want to call it, to enact bylaws changes when it's not October. We've heard varying opinions of that one as well. So those are my broad list of things that I'd like people to think about. I'm going to put this on the NANOG members list, or members at whatever we're called. Maybe NANOG features too, to get people interested. Of course, to vote, you need to be a member, so plugs for that. And otherwise, thanks, and I look forward to this discussion. And I'm hoping that we can have something that we have community consensus on that we can stick on the ballot in October. Thank you. Anybody, any questions for me now, or you want to get up and yell about it during the open mic session? That's fine too. All right, thanks.
Beer and beer.
So we're on, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Randy asked, what's your favorite forum for discussion, which I think is a good and serious question. I think Betty said, which you can't hear because she didn't have her microphone on because I turned it off on purpose, was that futures@nanog.org, which Steve also mentioned, members at, well, both, I think futures is actually a more appropriate forum, as that is where we discuss the future of NANOG, right? My comment was the beer and gear is probably my favorite forum to discuss the futures of NANOG, but it's up to you guys. And Steve said something nobody heard, so let's move on.
What did you say? Okay, yes. So we do have 25 minutes, so you have an open floor. You can ask all the questions you want. You can comment on the proposals. This is your time.
I'd like to encourage everyone to stand up and talk.
Yes.
But just remember, you're standing between me and alcohol.
You still have 25 minutes.
Not yet. Hi, Will Charnock with Software. I thought I was a member, but apparently I'm not, and that's what my question's about. Are you sending notifications out about expiring memberships? Because I didn't get one.
We are. Perhaps we have your wrong email address. So come and see the NANOG staff, Floor or Annabelle.
Never was. Well, I had it going.
If you ever have,
we'll fix it.
If the membership ever has any questions at all about, you know, if you're getting a message or not getting a message, always send your question to NANOG support.
Okay. Well, I didn't know until I got my badge.
Sorry about that.
I just looked. He is a member.
So I am, right? But
Yeah.
it didn't, when I registered, it actually didn't give me the pull down either. So I thought maybe it was just a system error.
He is
So
a member in the.
we're still working out some bugs here and there,
Okay,
but
obviously.
we'll double check, you know, to make sure. In answer to your first question, do we send out reminders? Yes.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the month, we get a list. Kat Roddery is the membership chair, and myself, we get a list of upcoming membership for renewals, and messages go out from the central staff to each of you, reminding you that you have 30 days to renew your membership. So if you didn't get one, we apologize, and we'll look into it.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Randy Bush, IAJ. First, a compliment, which is I think this organization's moved a long way and is acting almost like a normal small organization. And that's depressing, I'm sure, for the people who have to do it, and good for those of us who rely on it. Having been to the movie, I know that it was not fun and not easy. So thanks to you folk up there. There was actually a lot of detail and detailed proposals and questions there. And, you know, we throw it all up on members or futures or whatever. It's going to be hard to deal with them for those of us with insufficient patience. But I don't know how to deal with it. Beer, I don't drink beer. But I'd like to corner some of you, or if, you know, the board could hold a open sit down, or a board table at lunch for those people who really want to beat 2 or 3 of you up and say, here's what I thought of this. Just some other forum than here and boring this thousands of people or slugging it out on a mailing list. Some other forum would be nice.
That's easy to organize, Randy. We did put next to registration, there's a bulletin board. Let's pick a time, and we have rooms. We pretty much have the run of the hotels, so let's find a room, and we can assign a room and say those interested in talking about either the education track or the program, get together and then get a lot of the work done. Okay,
We
good
can,
idea.
if you want, we can put that, I hate to say, we can put it up against the peering track for those that aren't interested in peering. Sorry.
Okay, so,
That would be good.
I mean,
But we do have an available room at that time. That would be a nice setup for that.
That'd be
it's
great.
fun to make a lot of jokes and stuff, but in all seriousness, I mean, I think that I'm about as open as you can get. No, I'm not talking about you. I mean, what Dave was saying. But see everybody who has one of these cute, see one of these cute little red things? You can find us. We're not hard to find. And anybody who's afraid to talk to us clearly hasn't been to one of these community meetings before. We're all very approachable. We're all begging to hear from you. And I do understand that sometimes it's difficult to stand up at a microphone in front of hundreds of people and say something, but just find us in the hall. We're loud, we're boisterous, okay, I'm talking about myself, but some of us are loud and boisterous. Some of us may not be as loud and boisterous, but we're all willing to speak, and we're all desperate to hear your feedback, because we're going to make decisions for you. And the only way that you get to say anything about it is either by voting us out or coming to us and telling us, and we are begging you to come and tell us. And if you don't, we're going to make those decisions anyway. So like Randy said, it's very important that you come and find us, and we're looking for ways to help you come and find us. But the easiest way is just look for the little red banner, grab us, we won't say no, and tell us whatever you think, okay?
Yeah, so in addition to this, let's arrange, we have some extra rooms. We'll send an email. And tomorrow morning when we do our opening remarks, we'll have it somewhat organized, and then we can say which will be where, at what time, and in what room. Thank you for the suggestion.
David Huberman
David,
from Aaron.
yes.
I have 2 very different things to say. You had brought up in your slides the aging of the NANOG crowd, which I think is inarguable. The number of people who have retired or passed on, standing next to Stan.
Oh, thank you so much, Johnny. I appreciate it.
Look at the One of the problems I've always had with NANOG, and this is my own deal, not NANOG's deal, is, I mean, look at the agenda. Whether it's 100G deployment, challenges and lessons learned from the ANI prototype and SC11, you're not going to get a new network engineer to be able to justify his trip here for that, to some of the things that are very important, admittedly boring, to the ITU and openness and a view of top-down internet governance. Again, that's nothing you're going to get junior folks into the fold with. The tutorial track, the thing Steve was discussing, is critically important. Because when Philip Smith would do his introduction to BGP, that was so important. When, help me with his name, not Berkowitz, but Howard, there was an old guy who used to come to NANOGs who was a wonderful teacher. He would do tutorials. What's that? Berkowitz, yes, Berkowitz. They were wonderful tutorials, and these things made these meetings accessible. Mm-hmm. And if you can tie in accessible learning activities into the meeting, then all of a sudden you have a junior network engineer who might get interested in what ANI and SC11 are, and might actually get interested in something awful like internet governance, and soon they're sitting up there on the dais with you. Second point, and this will be briefer. Steve asked about term limits. Term limits are crucial for two reasons. One, these elections in bodies like this have the unfortunate effect of being popularity contests. And to protect the membership from those who are popular but are incompetent, it's very important that these terms are limited. Secondly, term limits are important for those who are elected. Michael's sitting up there. Michael will sit up there for the rest of his life if he thinks it's important to help the community, because he cares. Michael has done, when he's done his time, he should have to sit down so that he can enjoy it and not have to get up there and work every year.
Thank you, David.
So, David, let me just address more of a question to you than anything else.
Yeah.
One of the challenges that we have when you think about the tutorials, I find a lot of value in the introduction to BGP, right? I mean, that is, you're exactly right, that is the way to bring in fresh blood, is to give some junior engineer something to show their boss that says, this is going to help me help you, right? The challenge we have with those is that the people who present those ebb and flow, because we're not paying them to present it like some conferences do. Some of Steve's proposal addresses that, but at the same time, that's actually separate from the program. And so it's not necessarily going to fix exactly what you're talking about. So how do we get people to stand up and say, I don't care whether I have one person in the room listening to me or 100 people, I'm going to get up and talk about introduction to BGP. The MPLS OAM tutorial this morning had, I think, 10 people in it.
Philip Smith hasn't ebbed and flowed. Neither have I, and neither a bunch of core people who've been giving these tutorials around the world for 20-something years.
Randy,
but NANOG kind of moved away from them by choice, no blame, no. If you move back, I bet you Philip comes back.
I can't even speak directly to that aside to say that if someone had submitted that for this meeting and or the people who we generally ask to present them had offered that up, we would have put it on the agenda, absolutely.
Okay, we'll note that. Maybe we can write it in the call for proposals.
Sure.
Mike.
Michael Sinatra, YesNet. As the person who recruited the 100 gig for ANI and SC11 talk, I have to respond with all due respect, David. I think you're going to like it, and yeah. I think it was given at another conference. It was the highest overall rated talk in the survey. Maybe we shouldn't have put acronyms in it. Yeah. We should have just called it Real World 100 Gig Deployment Experiences, and that would have been better.
So you're right. So to Michael's point, Michael is exactly right. And I think I voted it, so we vote 1 out of 5, and I voted it a 5. It's actually the best 100 gig presentation we have seen in this forum, period. You're right, the title is horrible for getting people interested in it.
Do not be dissing Greg like that.
That'd be what?
Maybe that is something that the program committee should take a more active role in, is getting the titles right so that it actively conveys what's in the talk and so the agenda looks good for people.
That's crazy talk.
That's a
Randy Bush
very
and I-
good suggestion.
Randy Bush, IJ, have a suggestion for the title. The last 100 gig talk you'll ever have to go to.
Yes. Yeah, I think we can probably remove from a lot of acronyms. That'd be good. John?
WTF, Sylvie, WTF.
John Curran, President and CEO of Aaron. I'm going to pick up on a point that Randy Bush made. Yeah, actually I am. So I'd like to point out to the NANOG community that the board and the development committee, are there members of the NANOG development committee here? Masaka, Kat, I see some.
Fergus over there.
Right.
Paul is there.
If you see these folks around, I ask that you give them thanks. The point that might have gone very quickly by in the slides is NANOG is financially stable and strong, and it's really the work of the board and the development committee that has made that happen. You owe them thanks. This is not an easy job, and the fact that NANOG has made such progress is wonderful. And I just, on behalf of Aaron, we're very happy to help with the loan. We're very happy to know that you're stable and no longer need it, and that you're off on your own and doing so well. And I'd like to congratulate the board and the development committee for their efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We think we found a good model for sustainability, something that will last for many years. But we can always improve.
And just a follow-up note to that, everyone who's a member has access via Arrow, which is the service that you use to register through. When you register or log in, you have access to all the NANOG financial data. So as soon as we get it, and Mike, who's the treasurer, and I review to make sure it's accurate, we post for you. So even though we're not sending you messages, our profit and loss statements, our quarterly financials, and as soon as we get an official copy of our audit report back, we'll post all that information for you as well. So there's as much transparency as we can possibly give you by your membership in providing you information.
Yes?
Hi, Jeremiah Daniels with Internet Systems Consortium. I consider myself perpetually new as an administrator, as an operator. I've been doing it for 5-10 years, depending on who you ask. And the large scope internet governance topics, I think, are very important for junior operators. And I'm actually excited to go to that talk. But I also think that the really small details, because a lot of us younger folks have learned just by hacking things together and experimenting in the garage and things like that. And we're missing some of the scientific, the stuff you would pick up actually going to university and things like that. And so I think
you are confused if you think the rest of us went to university for this.
Well, not you guys necessarily, but so I think that both the macrocosm and microcosm aspects of being an operator should be addressed in future tutorials and future education tracks and things like that. But I also think that $1,000 is kind of ridiculous for like B-sides, for instance. They're $0, and they have 3 days of great classes. So figuring that out, that's going to be your guys' job, and that's why we elect you. But I think that $1,000 is just way too much to ask.
Okay. So are you, sorry, just a follow on. Are you, would you like to have like a sort of a back to the basics trainings or fill the gaps in my education or?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that, okay.
It's really hard, because all of us are at different levels in different education. What we do day to day may not reflect at all on the actual science behind it all, but it would be really interesting to know about how those electrons flow. But a lot of people probably aren't interested at all in that. So I don't know exactly what that tipping point is between being, pedantic and interesting. But yes, I would definitely like to have like the back to the basics as well as the, really advanced, large installations type stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Randy Bush, IAJ, just trying to. Betty, I must be wrong, but the access to the financial reports is not members only, correct? Please. Thank you. I just didn't understand the sign.
She
Patrick,
said yes.
I heard her. I heard her, Patrick. It's okay.
Yeah, it's just
You don't
members.
have to speak for her.
It's not for you, Randy, it's the rest of the people in the room.
We all heard her. Number two is, as an internet culture, we fill traditionally and in ideal sense fill a niche of the operator's technical community. ITF fills the protocol community. The registries fill the registry and we wish not the regulatory community. And ISOC is really our community agent for policy and I just don't want to use the phrase that seems so popular, but internet societal coordination. And it would be interesting to invite them in on that segment. And they've done some really excellent work. ISOC's really turned around in recent years. And for instance, they've got this is going to be strange, 5 video movies on alternative futures of what could be the futures of the internet. One of them is if the device manufacturers, if these people control the internet, your iPhone. Another is what if the telcos control the internet, et cetera. And they've just done a lot of work in this area, and they're really taken over in the ITF and so on and so forth community, starting to lead the interface to the social aspects and so forth of the internet. So partnering with them for that stuff would be interesting. Not to denigrate Aaron's great and continual role in internet governance. It would be nice if the governors did the governing.
Thank you. Wow, we're doing well. We still have 7 minutes. Do you have more questions or interventions? It's your time.
Warren Kamari, Google. So getting back to the membership renewal stuff, can there be a way where we can have it automatically renew? I mean, I got the renewal notice and I ignored it for 29 days because it was annoying to go find a credit card. Having it automatically renew would be awesome.
I love that idea. But
Okay.
you can sign up for 10 years and you get a small discount.
We can check what we can do, Warren, if I think there's some limits too because of the payment. So we can't just go withdraw money from your account at will. But let us see what we can do to make it probably a little more easy for you. Any more questions or interventions? This is tamed. It's awesome. We're done? So adjourned. Thank you.